Hey y'all, welcome to my kitchen. Tonight I want to make for you my version of meatloaf. This is a good hearty recipe that's pretty simple to put together. You can mix it up and put it in your oven. It takes about an hour for it to bake. It doesn't take real long to mix up. So let me tell you what actually goes in this meatloaf. We're going to do 2 pounds of hamburger meat. You're going to do about a half a cup of dried breadcrumbs. You can use the plain or the Italian. These are plain. You do about a quarter of a cup of dried onions. Now you can use fresh onion, or you can use like a half a package of the onion soup mix. Whichever one you have on hand is just as good. You're going to have 2 large eggs that we're going to beat up in a minute, and about a half a cup of milk. We're going to have some salt and pepper to taste. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of accent, and then a little bit of garlic salt to taste. And I'm going to splash it with some Worcestershire, and of course we're going to have our ketchup. So next I'm going to show you how we put all this together. Now I would recommend you take off any jewelry on rings that you have on, because you're going to mix this meatloaf by hand and it gets quite messy. Now I do have a meatloaf pan that is serrated, and the fat drops into the bottom while it's cooking. If you don't have one, you can actually use a Dutch oven or any type of oval casserole dish, because you just want to make it into a loaf. And you can shape that by hand if you don't have these pans. These are really nice because they do clean up, and you can put them in your dishwasher. So I have recently acquired this, and I do like it quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and get our ingredients mixed up. I'm going to take your eggs, and you're just going to slightly beat them. I'm just going to do it with a fork, and just enough to kind of get them broken down a little bit. We're going to add that in to our mixture, our meat. All right, and then we'll go ahead and put in the dried breadcrumbs. There's no particular order on how you mix this in, because it's all gonna get mixed up by hand anyway. And then you can put your onions in. If you don't like a lot of onion, just use less of it, but it does help flavor this. And then you can half this recipe and just make 1 pound and just half everything if you don't want this large of a meatloaf. Now I'm just going to do some salt and pepper to taste. I don't put a lot in because I do have a lot of other spices in here. There's some salt. Now I'm going to put a little bit of garlic salt. Just a little bit, just adds a little kick. All right, and then we have the accent. It's about half a teaspoon. My mom always used this in her recipe, so I've always have it on hand and use it in mine. And then we're gonna splash in some Worcestershire. Just a few splashes. No exact measurement. And we're gonna put the milk in. It's right at a half a cup. Now I'm gonna go ahead and start mixing this before I put in the ketchup, because that's gonna be around 3/4 of a cup. Now I just kind of eyeball it because I've made this recipe so many times that I don't actually measure that anymore. I just kind of mix it. But the recipe that my mom always made was like about 3/4 of a cup. But if you like a little more tomatoey taste, then add a little bit more ketchup. Now my husband and I love meatloaf, so we make this quite often here at our house. And this is messy, but it's good. It's actually better when you mix it by hand for some reason. So make sure you have clean hands. And you don't want to over mix. You just basically want to make sure that all the ingredients are kind of mixed in good together. And you know, since you beat your egg up, it's already, you don't have to worry about mixing that as much. All right, let's add in our ketchup. Like I said, I just kind of pour it in, and then I'm gonna mix that around. You may have to add more. And I like ketchup on the top of my meatloaf. Some of you may not. And that's fine, you don't have to add it, but I think it just adds a little extra to this if you like ketchup or a tomato taste on your meatloaf. But I went ahead and preheated my oven to 350. And I'm gonna cover this and I'm gonna bake it for an hour. Now for about the last 10 minutes, I'm gonna uncover it. That way it just gets a little brown on top. Okay, I think that's a good amount of ketchup. Make sure get it all. Now let's actually, I'm gonna add just a little bit more. Need some in here. Of course, you're gonna have to wipe down your ketchup bottle after you're done with this. All right, let's finish mixing this. If you like a classic meatloaf recipe, this is pretty classic. I've read all different types of meatloaf recipes. Some that have wrapped in bacon, some have cheese. There's all different kinds of meatloaf recipes. This is just a basic one that's pretty good always. It turns out pretty consistent. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and transfer this into our meatloaf pan. And we're just gonna mash it down. Nice thing about this, you don't have to worry about really forming it because the pan does it for you. And I'm gonna top this with ketchup. And then I'm gonna put foil on top and then I'm gonna bake it. All right, and I just kind of go back and forth with my ketchup on top. You can put none or just a little. And I'm going to put the foil on and I'm going to get this in the oven, and when we come back I'm going to show you how it looks. Alright y'all, as you can see I've got our meatloaf out of the oven. It is good and hot. We're actually going to let this meatloaf rest about 15 to 20 minutes before you slice it. That way it'll ensure all the juices stay in the meatloaf and it doesn't dry out, and it also helps to keep it together when you're slicing it to serve it. So I hope that y'all will try this recipe. Let me know how you like it. Hope you subscribe to my channel and click on the bell to get notifications for my upcoming videos. I hope y'all have a great evening, and thank you so much for watching.